Sterile Muscular CEO told her not to fall for him, but melted the moment she said his name. Nathan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't stop staring at the woman who'd haunted every sleepless night since he'd made the stupidest decision of his life. Have you ever been warned away from someone and felt more drawn to them because of it? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He was already walking away from her tearful eyes, briefcase in hand, when the little boy called out "Daddy" to someone else across the Miami ballroom. Nathan Cross froze. The word hit him like a punch to the chest, stopping his retreat mid-stride. Across the glittering charity gala, past the champagne glasses and designer gowns, stood Aaliyah Brooks. His Aaliyah, the woman he'd sent away 8 months ago to save her from his world of corporate sharks and media vultures. But she wasn't alone. A small boy clung to her emerald dress, his tiny hand wrapped around her fingers. Dark curls, serious green eyes, the same shade as Nathan's own. The child couldn't be more than 3 years old, but something about his face made Nathan's breath catch. Have you ever walked away from someone you love to protect them, only to discover you protected them right into someone else's arms? Tell me in the comments what choice you would have made. The Miami Children's Hospital gala buzzed around him, but Nathan heard nothing except the sound of his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. 3 months earlier, when she first called him Nathan instead of Mr. Cross during a late-night kitchen conversation, he should have fired her. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He let himself hope. Now, watching her laugh at something the child whispered in her ear, Nathan remembered why hope was the cruelest emotion of all. The ballroom's crystal chandeliers cast golden light across her brown skin, making her glow like the goddess she'd always been in his kitchen. But this version of Aaliyah looked different. Confident, complete, like she'd found something in Miami that Chicago, that he could never give her. Mr. Cross, his assistant's voice cut through his trance. The donor photo session is starting. Nathan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't stop staring at the woman who'd haunted every sleepless night since he'd made the stupidest decision of his life. 8 months ago, in his penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline, he'd thought he was being noble, protecting her, saving her from a scandal that was about to destroy his company and anyone close to him. "Pack your things," he'd said, his voice colder than winter wind off Lake Michigan. This was a mistake. The look on her face had nearly broken him then. It was destroying him now. Because across this ballroom, holding hands with a child who looked like Nathan's own reflection, Aaliyah Brooks was living a life he'd convinced himself she was better off without him in it. The little boy tugged on her dress, pointing toward the dessert table. Nathan watched her bend down, listened to her musical laugh carry across the crowd. The same laugh that used to fill his empty penthouse with warmth. His phone buzzed. A text from his security team. "Car ready for departure, sir." But Nathan couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until he understood what he was seeing. Not until he figured out how a woman he'd known was single, childless, and completely focused on her career had somehow become a mother to a boy who looked disturbingly familiar. The child turned then, scanning the crowd with intelligent eyes. When their gazes met across the ballroom, Nathan's world stopped. Those weren't just green eyes staring back at him. They were his green eyes, his stubborn jawline, his thick dark hair that never stayed where it was supposed to. Impossible. The doctors had been clear. War injuries, nerve damage, sterile, the word that had defined his relationships for 15 years. The reason he'd never let anyone close enough to disappoint. But impossible things happened every day. Miracles wore tiny tuxedos and called beautiful women mama. As their eyes locked across the ballroom, Nathan's world shifted off its axis. 8 months of telling himself he'd done the right thing crumbled like sand. When she first called him Nathan instead of Mr. Cross, he should have fired her. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He let himself hope. Now, staring at what might be the greatest miracle of his life, Nathan realized his biggest mistake wasn't hiring Aaliyah Brooks. It was letting her go. The richest man in Chicago hired her to feed his body, but she accidentally nourished his soul. 3 months earlier, Aaliyah Brooks had stood in Nathan Cross's penthouse kitchen, her hands shaking as she unpacked her knives. The job posting had been simple: private chef position, discretion required, competitive salary. What it hadn't mentioned was that her new boss looked like he could break her heart with a glance. Nathan Cross filled the doorway like storm clouds fill the sky, inevitable and dangerous. 6'3" of controlled power in a perfectly tailored suit. He watched her arrange spice containers with the intensity of a predator studying prey. "Ms. Brooks." His voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Before we begin, understand this. I value privacy above all else. My personal life stays personal. My business stays separate. And whatever fantasies you might have about working for a wealthy man, forget them now." Aaliyah's spine straightened. She'd dealt with entitled rich men before during her catering days in Atlanta. "Mr. Cross, I'm here to cook, not to gossip or chase fantasies. Your private life is none of my business." Something flickered in his green eyes. Surprise, maybe, or approval. "Good, because I need to be clear about something else." He stepped into the kitchen, his presence making the spacious room feel intimate. "Don't fall for me, Aaliyah. I can't give you the life you dream of." The warning should have offended her. Instead, it made her curious. What kind of man felt the need to warn women away before they'd even had a conversation? "Good thing I'm just here to cook, then," she replied, turning back to her prep work. But when she glanced up, she caught him staring. Not at her body, not with the hungry look she'd grown used to deflecting. He was watching her hands move across the cutting board with something that looked almost like longing. Have you ever been warned away from someone and felt more drawn to them because of it? Share your story below. Sometimes the most dangerous attractions start with a warning. For the next 2 weeks, they maintained professional distance. She cooked. He ate. They exchanged pleasantries about preferences and schedules. Nothing more, except for the way he lingered in the kitchen doorway during her evening prep. The way his eyes followed her movements when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he always found excuses to walk through the kitchen right around dinner time. Nathan Cross was a man starving for more than food, and Aaliyah was starting to realize she might be hungry too. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights reflecting off stainless steel surfaces like scattered diamonds. This kitchen was twice the size of her entire apartment back in Atlanta, equipped with professional-grade everything. But what struck her most wasn't the luxury, it was the loneliness. Everything in the penthouse was perfect, cold, untouched. Like a museum display of wealth, rather than a home where someone actually lived. "You don't cook for yourself, do you?" she asked one evening, plating his dinner with careful precision. "I eat what's necessary." "That's not what I asked." He paused in reviewing his tablet, green eyes meeting hers across the marble island. "No, I don't cook. Why not? I don't see the point in elaborate meals for one person." The sadness in those words hit her harder than it should have. Here was a man who could buy anything, go anywhere, have anyone. And he ate like eating was just another business transaction. Food isn't just fuel, Mr. Cross. It's comfort, connection, love made edible. Love. He said the word like it tasted bitter. That's a luxury some of us can't afford. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone rang. Business call. Crisis in New York. The moment vanished as quickly as it had come. But that night, as she cleaned the kitchen, Aaliyah noticed something different. Instead of retreating to his study immediately after dinner, Nathan had lingered at the kitchen island, watching her work. And for just a moment, the walls around him had seemed less thick. When she stayed late to prepare his favorite meal after his worst business day, Nathan realized his biggest mistake wasn't hiring her. It was believing he could keep his distance. Because every evening, watching Aaliyah Brooks transform his cold kitchen into something warm and alive, Nathan was learning the difference between existing and living. And that difference was going to destroy every wall he'd spent 15 years building. She broke his most important rule with just one word. His name spoken like a prayer in the darkness. 2 weeks into the job, Aaliyah learned that Nathan Cross didn't sleep well. She'd stayed late to prep ingredients for the next day's meals when she heard it. A sharp cry from the master bedroom, followed by restless pacing. the sound of someone fighting battles that existed only in dreams. Any smart employee would have left, minded their own business, respected boundaries. Instead, Aaliyah found herself moving toward the kitchen island, quietly preparing chamomile tea. When Nathan appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, hair mussed and wearing nothing but sleep pants, she pretended not to notice the sheen of sweat on his chest or the haunted look in his eyes. "Couldn't sleep," he said unnecessarily. "I made tea." She pushed the steaming mug across the marble surface. "My grandmother's recipe." She used to say chamomile was nature's way of whispering rest to troubled minds. He approached cautiously, like she was a wild animal that might bolt. "You don't have to stay late for this." "I wasn't staying late for this. This is just..." She searched for the right word. "Human kindness." Nathan wrapped his fingers around the mug, and she noticed how his hands trembled slightly. Not from cold, from whatever had chased him out of sleep. "Bad dreams?" she asked gently. "Memories." He took a sip, then another. "War has a way of following you home." The kitchen felt different in the darkness, lit only by under-cabinet lighting that cast everything in warm amber. More intimate, like they were sharing secrets instead of tea. "You were deployed?" "Marines. 3 tours in Afghanistan." His voice carried the weight of things he'd seen, things he couldn't unsee. "Took shrapnel and explosion that." He stopped, jaw tightening. "Let's just say it changed things." Aaliyah didn't push. She'd learned to read people during her years waiting tables, catering events, navigating the service industry, where reading a room could mean the difference between good tips and going home empty-handed. Nathan Cross wasn't just rich and powerful. He was broken in ways money couldn't fix. "You don't have to carry everything alone, Nathan." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Not Mr. Cross." Nathan, his actual name, spoken soft as a prayer in the amber-lit darkness. He went very still. "What did you call me?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "I am sorry. I meant Mr. Cross. I overstepped." "No." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Say it again. When was the last time someone saw past your walls? That moment when you felt truly understood? Tell me in the comments about the person who first called you by name like it mattered." "Nathan." This time she said it deliberately, watching how his eyes closed like the sound caused physical pain. "Nobody calls me that. Not anymore." He set down the mug with careful precision. "Nathan died somewhere in the mountains outside Kabul. What came back was just this." "This?" She gestured at him. Successful businessman, penthouse owner, man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. "This looks pretty alive to me. You don't understand. Then help me understand." She moved around the island, closing the distance between them. "Because from where I'm standing, I see a man who's convinced himself he's not worth saving. And that's the biggest lie anyone ever told you." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and danger. She could see the war in his eyes, not just the one he'd fought overseas, but the one he fought every day against letting anyone close. "I should go back to bed," he said, but he didn't move. "You should," but she didn't step away either. "This is unprofessional. Completely. I'm your employer. You are. I could fire you for this." "You could." She tilted her head, studying his face in the amber light. "Will you?" His laugh was rough, broken. "I should. Any smart man would." "Are you a smart man, Nathan?" The way she said his name, like it was something precious instead of something to be avoided, made his breath catch. "Not when you're looking at me like that." "How am I looking at you?" "Like you see something worth saving." The honest admission hung between them, vulnerable and dangerous. Aaliyah felt her heart crack open for this man who'd convinced himself he was beyond redemption. "You don't have to be perfect to be worth loving," she whispered. As she turned to leave, he caught her wrist. His fingers were warm against her pulse, and she could feel his need in the gentle pressure of his grip. "Stay," he whispered, not knowing he'd just changed the rules of everything. The word hung in the air like a question mark. Stay for tea. Stay for conversation. Stay for whatever this was becoming between them. Aaliyah looked down at his hand on her wrist, then up into green eyes that held 15 years of loneliness. "Okay," she said simply. And in that moment, Both of them understood they just crossed a line that would change everything. He invited her into his private world, thinking she'd run. Instead, she set the table for two. The next evening, Nathan did something he'd never done before. He asked Aaliyah to join him for dinner, not as his employee preparing and serving his meal, but as his guest sharing it. "I eat alone every night," he said, standing in his study doorway while she plated his usual Wednesday dinner. "It gets old." She looked up, surprised. "You want me to eat with you? If you're comfortable with that." His formal tone couldn't hide the vulnerability underneath. "Unless you have somewhere else to be." Aaliyah thought of her empty studio apartment, the frozen dinner waiting in her freezer, the stack of cooking magazines she'd read for the 100th time. "I don't have anywhere else to be." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at his dining table, a massive piece of darkwood that could have seated 12 but felt intimate set for two. Candles flickered between them, casting dancing shadows across his face. "This is strange," Nathan admitted, cutting into the herb-crusted salmon she'd prepared. "Good strange or bad strange?" Jury's still out. He took a bite, then nodded approvingly. "You're an exceptional cook. You're an exceptional eater." At his raised eyebrow, she smiled. "Most people wolf down my food like it's just fuel. You actually taste it. Pay attention to flavors and textures. It's nice to cook for someone who notices. Have you ever had someone see your worth when you couldn't see it yourself? Drop a heart in the comments if someone made you feel truly valued." The conversation flowed easier than either expected. She told him about growing up in Savannah, learning to cook at her grandmother's side, working double shifts to put herself through culinary school. He shared carefully edited versions of his military service, his transition to business, the long nights building cross-tech from nothing. But it was what they didn't say that mattered most. The way his eyes lingered on her face when she laughed. How she leaned forward when he spoke, genuinely interested in his words rather than his wealth. "Can I ask you something personal?" Aaliyah said as they finished dessert. Nathan tensed slightly. "Depends on how personal. Why don't you date?" The question caught him off guard. Most women approach the subject sideways, hinting and fishing for information. Aaliyah's directness was refreshing and terrifying. "Who says I don't date? Your refrigerator, your calendar, the fact that you eat dinner alone every night and seemed genuinely shocked when I suggested food could be about connection." She tilted her head, studying him. "So why don't you?" Nathan was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, "Because I can't give women what they want." "What do they want?" "Marriage, children, a future." The words came out flat, emotionless, practiced. "I learned a long time ago that it's kinder to avoid those expectations entirely. And what if someone didn't want those things? What if they just wanted you?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Want him? Not his money, his success, his potential as a provider. Just him. "That's not how it works," he said carefully. "How it works? Relationships. Love." He said the word like it was foreign. "People don't just want you for you. They want what you can give them, what you can become, what role you can fill in their life story." Aaliyah set down her fork, meeting his eyes across the candlelit table. "You're not broken, Nathan. You're just careful." The simple statement landed like a revelation. Not broken, careful, like his isolation was a choice rather than a sentence. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but there was no heat in it. "Maybe not, but I know what I see when I look at you." "What's that?" "A man who's so afraid of disappointing people that he won't let them close enough to be disappointed." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "A man who thinks kindness is weakness and vulnerability is failure." Her touch sent electricity up his arm, and Nathan had to fight not to pull away. Not because he didn't want it, but because he wanted it too much. "What if you're wrong?" he asked. "What if letting people close just gives them more ways to hurt you? Then you get hurt, and you heal, and you try again." Her smile was gentle, understanding. "That's how humans work, Nathan. We're designed for connection, not isolation." The candles flickered between them, wax pooling in silver holders, and Nathan felt something shift in his chest. A loosening of tight bands he'd wrapped around his heart so long ago he'd forgotten they were there. When she leaned across the table to wipe sauce from his lip, Nathan forgot every reason why he should push her away. Her soft gasp told him she'd forgotten too. Her thumb lingered at the corner of his mouth, and he caught her wrist, holding her there. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers like a trapped butterfly. Aaliyah. Her name was a warning and a prayer. "I know," she whispered. "This complicates things. I'm your boss. I know. I could fire you tomorrow." "You could." Her eyes never left his. "Will you?" Instead of answering, he turned his head slightly, pressing a soft kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Aaliyah felt tears prick her eyes. "You're gonna break my heart," she whispered. "Probably." His honesty was brutal and beautiful. Nathan looked at her, really looked, taking in her warm brown eyes, the concerned furrow between her brows, the way she held his gaze even when the conversation turned difficult. "Because for the first time in 15 years, he said slowly, I want to try to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you." The admission hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. And when Aaliyah smiled, really smiled, lighting up her whole face, Nathan understood why people wrote poems about love. He was about to find out if he was brave enough to live one. The kiss that changed everything happened in his kitchen at midnight, tasting of chocolate and dangerous promises. 3 days after their dinner, Aaliyah was cleaning up after preparing Nathan's favorite dessert when he appeared in the kitchen doorway. She'd been avoiding him since Tuesday night. Not rudely, just professionally, keeping appropriate distance while her heart hammered against her ribs every time he walked into a room. "Avoiding me?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe with arms crossed, maintaining professional boundaries. She didn't look up from loading the dishwasher. Like a responsible employee. "Look at me, Aaliyah." The quiet command in his voice made her pulse skip. Slowly, she turned around, finding him closer than expected, close enough to smell his cologne, to see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said, about trying again, about connection." He stepped closer, backing her against the marble island. "About you. Nathan, I need you to understand something." His hands braced on either side of her, trapping her without touching. "Well, I told you about not being able to give women what they want. There's more to it." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What do you mean?" "The explosion that ended my military career. The shrapnel." His jaw tightened. "It didn't just leave scars. It left me unable to have children." The words hung heavy between them. Aaliyah processed what he was telling her, understanding flooding her features. "You're sterile," she said softly. Not a question. Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. "So when I say I can't give you the life you dream of." "Nathan." She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "Do you think that changes how I see you?" "It should." "Why?" "Because you can't father children. You're somehow less of a man, less worthy of love." The question hit him like a physical blow. That was exactly what he believed for 15 years. "Most women want families," he said carefully. "Some women do. Some don't. Some, like me, are too busy trying to survive to dream about hypothetical futures." Her thumbs traced his cheekbones. "But you know what I do dream about?" "What?" "Someone seeing me. Really seeing me. Not just what I can provide or what role I can fill." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Someone brave enough to let me see them back." What's more powerful, being loved for your perfection or despite your flaws? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The space between them charged with electricity. Nathan's eyes searched her face, looking for signs of pity, rejection, the careful withdrawal he'd grown used to. Instead, he found acceptance, warmth, something that looked dangerously like affection. "You don't understand what you're getting into," he said roughly. "Then show me." The words were barely out of her mouth before his lips crashed against hers. Desperate, hungry, 15 years of isolation poured into one kiss. Aaliyah melted into him, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He lifted her onto the marble island, stepping between her knees, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. The kiss deepened, became something wild and necessary. "Tell me to stop," he breathed against her mouth. "Never." His hands found the hem of her blouse, sliding underneath to map warm skin. She arched into his touch, a soft moan escaping her lips. "Aaliyah." Her Her name was a prayer, a question, a plea. Yes, she whispered, understanding what he was asking. Yes to all of it. He carried her to his bedroom, setting her down gently beside the massive bed. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything silver in shadow. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as his hands shook with want. Instead of answering with words, she began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers steady and sure. Each button revealed more scarred skin, testament to battles fought and survived. When she pressed her lips to the worst of the scars, a jagged line across his ribs, Nathan's breath caught. "Beautiful," she murmured against his skin. "I'm not. You are." She looked up at him, eyes fierce with certainty. "Every part of you." When he undressed her, it was with reverence that made her feel like something precious. Each touch asked permission. Each kiss was a question she answered with sighs and soft encouragements. "Is this okay?" he whispered as he settled over her. "Yes." The word came out breathless, full of want and trust and something deeper. When they came together, it was with an intensity that surprised them both. Not just physical need, but emotional connection. The meeting of two people who'd been alone too long, finding home in each other's arms. Afterwards, they lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, hearts still racing. Nathan traced patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "I should probably go back to my apartment," Aaliyah said, but made no move to leave. "Should you?" "Definitely. This is already complicated enough without morning after awkwardness. What if I don't want you to go?" The quiet admission made her lift her head, studying his face in the darkness. "Nathan, stay, please." The vulnerability in his voice undid her completely. "I know it's selfish, but I don't want to wake up alone. Not tonight." So she stayed, curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal, feeling safer than she had in years. As she drifted toward sleep, Nathan whispered words that would change everything. "I think I'm falling in love with you." But morning had a way of making midnight confessions seem impossible. And when Aaliyah woke to an empty bed and the sound of Nathan on a business call, reality crashed back with brutal efficiency. Some lines, once crossed, changed the entire map. As she slipped out of his apartment while he was still on his call, leaving nothing but the indent of her head on his pillow, Aaliyah wondered if they'd just found something beautiful or destroyed something precious. By evening, when she returned to cook dinner and he acted like nothing had happened, she had her answer. Beautiful things, she was learning, were often the most fragile. She woke up in his arms, thinking she'd found forever. By evening, the whole city would be talking about her shame. Morning light crept through Nathan's bedroom windows like an unwelcome witness. Aaliyah stirred against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. For one perfect moment, everything felt right. Then reality slammed back. She was naked in her boss's bed. The man who signed her paychecks was tracing lazy circles on her bare shoulder. Professional boundaries hadn't just been crossed, they'd been obliterated. "Good morning." Nathan's voice was rough with sleep, intimate in a way that made her stomach flutter. "Morning." She pulled the sheet higher, suddenly self-conscious. "I should get dressed. Start breakfast." His arm tightened around her. "Stay a few more minutes." "Nathan, we can't pretend this didn't happen, but we also can't." His phone rang, sharp and insistent. Nathan reached for it, frowning at the caller ID. "I have to take this." Crisis in Tokyo. As he launched into rapid-fire business speak, Aaliyah slipped from the bed and gathered her clothes. In the harsh light of day, last night felt like a beautiful dream that was quickly becoming a nightmare. She dressed quickly, avoiding her reflection in his bathroom mirror. What had she been thinking? Sleeping with her employer was career suicide, especially for someone like her who couldn't afford to lose this job. By the time Nathan finished his call, she was dressed and heading for the door. "Aaliyah, wait. I'll have breakfast ready in 30 minutes, she said without turning around. Same as always, but nothing was the same. Not the way he watched her move around the kitchen. Not the electric tension that crackled between them when he reached past her for coffee. Not the careful distance she maintained while serving his eggs. "We need to talk about last night," he said. "Do we?" She kept her voice steady, professional. "Because I think we both know it was a mistake." Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or relief, if that's what you want. It wasn't what she wanted. She wanted to crawl back into his arms and pretend the outside world didn't exist. But she learned long ago that wanting and having were two very different things. "It's what's smart." Nathan nodded slowly. "Then we'll pretend it never happened." Have you ever been judged for who you loved? How did you handle the whispers and stares? Tell me in the comments. But Crosstech's Chicago office building buzzed with gossip like electricity before a storm. Word traveled fast in corporate towers. The boss's new chef had been spotted leaving his penthouse early morning, hair mussed and wearing yesterday's clothes. "Did you see her walking out this morning?" whispered his assistant to the marketing director. "Same dress as yesterday. I heard she's from Atlanta. Probably saw dollar signs the minute she met him." Poor Nathan. He has no idea what she's really after. By lunch, the rumors had taken on a life of their own. By afternoon, they'd reached the ears of people who mattered. People who could make her life very difficult. Aaliyah felt the stares when she walked through the lobby to pick up supplies. Heard conversation stop when she passed. Saw the way other staff members looked at her. Some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disgust. She was the help who'd gotten above herself. The gold digger who'd seduced the boss. The cautionary tale about what happened when you mixed business with pleasure. That evening, as she prepared Nathan's dinner with hands that trembled slightly, she wondered if she'd just destroyed everything she'd worked so hard to build. Nathan appeared in the kitchen doorway, and the air between them crackled with unresolved tension. She could see the want in his eyes, the way his gaze lingered on her mouth. "The rumors have started," she said without looking up from the stove. "I know. Your employees think I'm a gold digger. I don't care what they think." She finally met his eyes. "You should. This affects your reputation too." "My reputation can handle gossip. Can you?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Could she handle being the subject of corporate gossip? Could she survive being painted as the opportunistic woman who'd seduced her wealthy boss? "I don't know," she admitted. Nathan moved closer, and she caught a whiff of his cologne, the same scent that had surrounded her last night when the world made sense. "I can make this stop," he said quietly. "Transfer you to another position. Set you up with your own catering company. Whatever you need. Is that what you want? To get rid of me? What I want and what's smart are two different things." His voice was rough with frustration, just like you said this morning. They stood there in his kitchen, 3 feet apart, but it might as well have been miles. Both wanting to close the distance, both knowing it would only make things worse. "Maybe some space would be good," Aaliyah said finally. "Let the gossip die down." Nathan nodded, but his hands clenched at his sides. "If that's what you think is best." Neither of them mentioned that space was the last thing either wanted. That night, Aaliyah lay in her empty studio apartment, staring at the ceiling and missing the warmth of Nathan's arms. Across town, Nathan sat in his study, staring at quarterly reports without seeing them, missing the sound of her laughter in his kitchen. When a text from her sister arrived at midnight, "Mom's in hospital. Emergency surgery tonight. Can you come?" Aaliyah stared at the message through tears. She couldn't afford the plane ticket to Atlanta, couldn't afford to miss work, couldn't afford the medical bills that would come. But when Nathan knocked on her apartment door an hour later, car keys in hand and concern etched on his face, she realized their relationship had crossed every professional boundary, whether they acknowledged it or not. "How did you? Your emergency contact form listed your sister. She called me when she couldn't reach you." His eyes searched her face. "Pack a bag. My plane leaves in 2 hours." "Nathan, I can't." "Yes, you can. And you will." His voice brooked no argument. "Because whatever happened between us, whatever mistakes we've made, you're not facing this alone." As she threw clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands, Aaliyah realized the most dangerous thing about Nathan Cross wasn't his wealth or power. It was how easily he could make her believe she mattered. He flew her to Atlanta as his woman, not his employee, and met the family who taught him what real wealth looked like. The private jet's engines hummed steadily as they flew through the night toward Atlanta. Aaliyah sat across from Nathan, hands clasped tightly in her lap, staring out at city lights scattered below like fallen stars. "Tell me about your mother," Nathan said quietly. "Diabetes. She's been managing it for years, but lately." Aaliyah's voice caught. "She works 2 jobs to help support my younger siblings. Never takes care of herself. I keep sending money, but it's never enough." Nathan watched her fight back tears, and something shifted in his chest. This wasn't the confident woman who challenged him in his kitchen. This was someone afraid of losing the person who meant most to her. "She raised 4 kids alone after Dad died," Aaliyah continued. "Worked herself to the bone to make sure we had what we needed. Never complained, never asked for help. Sounds like you got your strength from her." And my stubbornness. A watery smile crossed her face. "She's gonna hate that I brought you." "Why?" "Because she'll think you're charity. And Mama doesn't take charity from anyone." The Atlanta hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Aaliyah's family filled the waiting room. Her younger sister Jasmine, twin brothers Marcus and Michael, all of them looking exhausted and worried. When Nathan walked in beside Aaliyah, conversation stopped. 3 pairs of eyes assessed him with the protective suspicion reserved for strangers who might hurt someone they loved. "Everyone, this is Nathan," Aaliyah said simply. "Nathan, this is my family. When someone you love meets your family, what matters more? Their acceptance or your happiness? Share your thoughts in the comments." Jasmine stood first, all 5'2" of her bristling with protective energy. "So you're the boss?" "I am." Nathan extended his hand. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "Are you?" Jasmine ignored his outstretched hand. "Because it seems convenient that my sister's rich employer just happened to have a private jet ready when she needed it." "Jasmine," Aaliyah warned. "No, it's okay." Nathan lowered his hand. "She's right to be suspicious. If someone showed up with my sister during a crisis, I'd have questions too." Marcus, the quieter twin, spoke up. "What kind of questions?" "Like whether my intentions were genuine, whether I was taking advantage of a vulnerable situation, whether I could be trusted with someone precious to me." The honesty in his answer seemed to surprise them. Nathan looked around the humble waiting room. Plastic chairs, vending machines, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick. This wasn't his world of leather and crystal and statements measured in millions. But the love here was richer than anything he'd ever owned. "I need coffee," Aaliyah said. "Nathan, would you?" "I'll go." Jasmine volunteered, clearly wanting to get Nathan alone. "Mr. Cross can keep me company." As they walked toward the hospital cafeteria, Nathan braced himself for the interrogation he knew was coming. "My sister's a good person," Jasmine said without preamble. "I know. She doesn't date much. Too busy working, sending money home, taking care of everyone else." "I gathered that." Jasmine stopped walking, turned to face him. "So what's your story?" "Rich man having fun with the help." The accusation should have angered him. Instead, Nathan found himself respecting her directness. "No, it's more complicated than that." "How complicated?" "The kind where I'm falling in love with her and have no idea what to do about it." Jasmine blinked, clearly not expecting such honesty. "Love. Terrifying, isn't it?" Nathan's laugh was rough. "I spent 15 years avoiding exactly this situation. Then your sister walked into my kitchen and changed everything." They reached the cafeteria, but neither moved toward the coffee machine. Instead, they stood in uncomfortable silence until Jasmine spoke again. "She's been hurt before, by men who promised things they couldn't deliver. I won't make promises I can't keep." "What can you promise?" Nathan thought about the question seriously. "That I'll never lie to her. That I'll respect her choices, even when I disagree. That if she lets me, I'll spend every day trying to deserve her." Something in Jasmine's expression softened. "That's either the most honest thing I've ever heard, or you're a really good liar. I guess you'll have to decide which." When they returned to the waiting room, Aaliyah was curled up in Nathan's chair, exhausted from hours of worry. Without thinking, Nathan gathered her into his arms, settling back in the chair with her across his lap. She should have protested, should have been embarrassed about the public display. Instead, she burrowed deeper into his warmth, feeling safe for the first time since the phone call. "Any word?" Nathan asked Marcus. "Surgery's going well. Few more hours. Nathan nodded, his hand stroking Aaliyah's hair as she dozed against his chest. Across the waiting room, her family watched the interaction with growing understanding. This wasn't charity. This wasn't obligation. This was a man who'd moved heaven and earth to get the woman he loved to her mother's bedside. When the doctor finally emerged with good news, surgery successful, full recovery expected, tears flowed freely. Aaliyah hugged her siblings, relief and exhaustion making her shaky. "Can we see her?" she asked. "Two at a time. Family only." Nathan started to step back, but Aaliyah caught his hand. "He's with me." The doctor looked uncertain, but Jasmine spoke up. "He's family." Those two words, "he's family," hit Nathan harder than any business deal or military commendation ever had. Acceptance from people who owed him nothing, expected nothing, but had decided he was worth trusting with someone they loved. Later, as Aaliyah's mother, Virginia Brooks, slept peacefully in her hospital bed, Nathan found himself alone with the woman who'd raised the person he was falling in love with. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on his face with the same intelligent assessment he recognized in Aaliyah. "You're the boss," she said, her voice weak but clear. "I am. Nathan Cross. My baby thinks a lot of you." The feeling's mutual. Virginia smiled, the expression transforming her tired features. She's been taking care of everyone else her whole life. About time someone took care of her. "I'd like to try, if she'll let me." "Then you better be worth it, Nathan Cross. Because if you break her heart, you'll answer to me." The threat delivered in a whisper from a hospital bed should have been laughable. Instead, Nathan found himself nodding solemnly. "Yes, ma'am." As her mother took his hand and whispered, "Take care of my baby," Nathan made a promise he didn't know he couldn't keep. The scandal brewing in Chicago was about to test everything. But for now, in a humble hospital room in Atlanta, surrounded by people who measured wealth in love rather than dollars, Nathan Cross felt richer than he ever had in his penthouse overlooking the world. The headlines screamed betrayal, but the real devastation came from the doubt in her eyes when she read them. 3 days in Atlanta had felt like a lifetime. Nathan watched Aaliyah with her family, laughing with her siblings, fussing over her recovering mother, cooking in Virginia's tiny kitchen like she was orchestrating a symphony. He'd seen her in his gleaming penthouse kitchen, but this was different. Here, she was home. "You're staring," she said, not looking up from the cornbread she was mixing. "You're beautiful when you're happy." "I'm beautiful all the time," she teased, then grew serious. "Thank you for bringing me here, for the medical bills you paid when you thought I wasn't looking." "Aaliyah, don't deny it. I know you covered the surgery costs. Mama's insurance wouldn't have handled everything." Nathan shrugged. Money meant nothing to him, but it meant everything to her family's peace of mind. It was nothing. It was everything. She turned to face him, flour dusting her cheek. "But we need to talk about what happens when we go back to Chicago." Before he could answer, his phone rang. Marcus, his head of security. "Sir, we have a problem." The tone made Nathan's blood run cold. "What kind of problem?" "Media problem. Big one. You need to see this." Nathan pulled up the news app on his tablet, and his world tilted off its axis. The headline screamed across the screen. "Tech billionaire's kitchen conquest. Inside Nathan Cross's affair with his personal chef." The article was brutal. Photos of them entering the hospital together. Quotes from anonymous sources at Crosstech describing their inappropriate relationship. Speculation about her motives, his judgment, the company's future. But the worst part was the sidebar story. Gold digger or genuine. The truth about Aaliyah Brooks. They dug into her background, found her financial struggles, painted her as an opportunistic woman who'd seduced her wealthy employer. Every private detail of her life lay bare for public consumption. How do you love someone when the whole world is watching and judging? Share your experience with public scrutiny in the comments. Nathan? Aaliyah moved closer, seeing the look on his face. "What's wrong?" Wordlessly, he handed her the tablet. The color drained from her face as she read. Her hand started shaking by the second paragraph. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her cheeks. They make me sound like a prostitute, she whispered. They're vultures. Ignore them. Ignore them. She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Nathan, this is everywhere. My name, my family's information, pictures of my mother in the hospital. They turned our private moment into a circus. The kitchen door swung open, and Jasmine burst in holding her phone. Aaliyah, have you seen? She stopped, taking in their faces. Oh, you've seen. What's happening? Virginia called from the living room. Nothing, Mama. Aaliyah called back, but her voice broke on the words. Nathan reached for her, but she stepped away. Don't. Not now. This will blow over. These stories always do. Will they? She wiped her eyes angrily. Because right now, everyone who matters in your world thinks I'm some scheming woman who targeted you for your money. I don't care what they think. Well, I do. The words exploded out of her. I care that your employees think I'm a joke. I care that business partners will question your judgment. I care that my family is now fodder for gossip websites. Nathan's phone rang again. His board of directors demanding an emergency meeting. The stock price dropping in after-hours trading. Crisis management, damage control, corporate reputation. I have to take this, he said reluctantly. Of course you do. For the next hour, Nathan fielded calls from lawyers, publicists, and board members while Aaliyah sat in her mother's kitchen, reading every brutal article about their relationship. Each word was a knife. Each headline, a humiliation. They'd taken something beautiful and twisted it into something sordid. When Nathan finally ended his last call, he found her sitting on the back porch steps, staring at the stars. Talk to me, he said, settling beside her. They want you to choose. What? You're bored. I could hear them through the phone. They want you to distance yourself from me. Publicly deny any serious relationship. Protect the company's reputation. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. And if I refuse? Then Crosstech suffers. Stock prices drop. Clients question your judgment. Employees wonder if their jobs are secure. She looked at him with eyes full of pain. Everything you've worked for gets damaged because of me. It's not because of you. It's because of them. The result is the same. She stood, brushing dust off her jeans. We both knew this was complicated. Maybe it's time to admit it's impossible. Don't do this. Don't let them win. Win. She laughed bitterly. Nathan, they've already won. Look at us. 3 days ago, we were happy. Now we're sitting here talking about damage control and reputation management. Is this what love is supposed to feel like? The question hit him like a physical blow because he didn't have an answer. Inside the house, he could hear her family trying to process what was happening. Her mother, worried about medical bills being used against her daughter. Her siblings, angry that their privacy had been invaded. I'm going back to Chicago tomorrow, Aaliyah said quietly. Alone, Aaliyah. I need space to think, and you need to figure out what's more important, the company or this relationship. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes nearly broke him. But it's reality, and we both have to live with it. When his board demanded he choose between saving the company and protecting her reputation, Nathan made the choice he thought was noble. He had no idea it was the one she'd never forgive. That night, lying in Virginia's guest room, Nathan stared at the ceiling and wondered if loving someone meant being willing to lose them. By morning, he had his answer, and it was going to destroy them both. He destroyed her with kindness, sending her away for her own good. The most selfish, selfless act in history. The flight back to Chicago felt like riding to an execution. Nathan sat across from Aaliyah in his private jet, watching her stare out the window at clouds that looked like cotton balls against blue sky. Neither had slept. Both looked like they'd aged years in a single night. We need to discuss how to handle this, Nathan said finally. Handle what? The media situation. The board meeting this afternoon. Our next steps. Aaliyah finally looked at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made his chest tighten. Resignation, like she'd already decided how this would end. What do you want to do? She asked. Fight. Stand up to them. Tell the world that what we have is real and they can go to hell. In Crosstech, we'll survive. Companies bounce back from scandals all the time. What about the employees who might lose their jobs if stock prices keep dropping? The clients who might jump ship? The investors who trusted you with their money? Every question was a scalpel, cutting deeper into his resolve. Nathan had built Crosstech from nothing, employed hundreds of people, created something that mattered. Could he really risk it all for a relationship that was barely 2 months old? "You're asking me to choose," he said. "I'm asking you to be realistic." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the hurt underneath. "We're adults, Nathan. We knew this was complicated from the beginning. Have you ever been saved from something you didn't want to be saved from? How did it feel to have someone choose for you? Tell me in the comments." The Chicago skyline appeared below them, all glass and steel and cold ambition. Nathan's world, where everything had a price and every decision was calculated for maximum efficiency. "What if I could fix this?" he said suddenly. "Ow! What if I could make the scandal disappear? Give you a fresh, start somewhere new, where no one knows your name or your history." Aaliyah went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you too much to watch you get destroyed by my world." The words came out in a rush, like he was afraid he'd lose courage if he stopped. "I can set you up with your own restaurant in any city you want. Miami, New York, Los Angeles. Whatever you need to start over. Start over." She repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "Without you, it would be temporary, until this blows over, until I can find a way to make it work." And how long would temporary be? Nathan didn't answer because they both knew. In his world, scandals might fade, but they never fully disappeared. There would always be whispers, always be people who remembered the chef who'd seduced the boss. "You're breaking up with me," Aaliyah said quietly. "I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From this." He gestured at his phone, still buzzing with calls from reporters. "From having your life dissected by strangers. From being painted as a gold digger every time someone wants to hurt me. And you get to decide what I can handle." The question stopped him cold. That's exactly what you're doing." She stood up, pacing the narrow aisle of the jet. "You're deciding that I'm too fragile, too weak, too whatever to survive your world. So you're going to save me from myself. I'm trying to give you a better life. A life without you in it is not better." The words burst out of her, raw and painful. "God, Nathan, do you even hear yourself? You're talking about shipping me off like I'm some problem to be solved. That's not how I see you. Then stop treating me like I don't get a say in my own life." The jet began its descent, and Nathan felt everything he cared about slipping away like sand through his fingers. "What do you want me to do? Let them destroy you? I want you to fight for us. I want you to believe we're worth fighting for." "I do believe that." "No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be talking about sending me away for my own good." Tears started falling down her cheeks. "You'd be talking about how we face this together." Nathan reached for her, but she pulled away. "Aaliyah, please. I love you," she said, the words like a goodbye. "But I won't be with someone who thinks I need to be protected from the consequences of loving them." The jet touched down at Chicago's private airfield, and Nathan felt his world shatter. "So what happens now? Now you make your choice." Aaliyah grabbed her bag, heading for the exit. Your company or your conscience. Your reputation or your heart. It's not that simple. She paused at the top of the stairs, looking back at him with eyes full of pain and disappointed love. "Yes, it is. You're just too scared to admit it." That afternoon, Nathan sat in Crosstech's boardroom, surrounded by suits and spreadsheets, and people who measured everything in dollars and market share. His board of directors waited expectantly for his decision. "The situation with your personal chef," his chairman began, "it needs to be resolved. Quickly and definitively. What are you suggesting?" "Terminate her employment. Issue a statement that the relationship was brief and unprofessional. Distance yourself publicly. Show the world that Crosstech as CEO doesn't let personal entanglements affect business judgment." Nathan stared out the conference room windows at the city spread below. Somewhere out there, Aaliyah was probably packing her things, preparing to leave his life forever. "Sir," his chairman prompted. "Pack your things." Nathan heard himself say into his phone 30 minutes later, the words tasting like poison. This was a mistake. The silence on the other end of the line stretched forever. "Then, I see. I'll have HR prepare a severance package. Enough to help you start over wherever you want to go." How generous. Her voice was flat, emotionless, dead. Anything else? Aaliyah. The line went dead. Nathan sat in his empty office as evening fell over Chicago, the city lights blurring through tears he refused to let fall. He'd saved his company, protected his reputation, made this smart business decision. He'd also just destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to him. 3 weeks later, he discovered the truth. The scandal had been orchestrated by his biggest business rival, designed specifically to destroy him by targeting the one thing he'd let himself care about. By then, Aaliyah was gone, and all his sacrifice had been for nothing. But the real tragedy wasn't the manipulation or the wasted noble gesture. It was that he'd proven her right. When it mattered most, when love demanded courage, Nathan Cross had chosen fear. And some mistakes he was learning couldn't be fixed with money or power or good intentions. Some mistakes just had to be lived with one empty day at a time. She rebuilt her life one recipe at a time, never knowing he'd destroyed his empire trying to find her again. 6 months after the worst conversation of his life, Nathan Cross stood in his empty penthouse kitchen, staring at takeout containers that had become his primary source of nutrition. The granite island where Aaliyah had once worked magic with simple ingredients now held nothing but his laptop and the remnants of another forgettable meal. Crosstech had recovered. Stock prices stabilized. The board was happy. The media had moved on to fresher scandals. Nathan had never been more miserable in his life. Sir Marcus, his head of security, appeared in the kitchen doorway. Any luck with the search? Nothing. Nathan rubbed his eyes, exhausted from another sleepless night. It's like she disappeared completely. For 6 months, Nathan had used every resource at his disposal to find Aaliyah Brooks. Private investigators, security firms, tech experts who could trace digital footprints through cyberspace. Nothing. She'd vanished as completely as if she never existed. Her apartment in Chicago had been abandoned, lease terminated. Her sister Jasmine had moved apartments, changed phone numbers. Even her mother's hospital records had been sealed. Aaliyah had covered her tracks with the thoroughness of someone who never wanted to be found. Maybe it's time to stop looking, Marcus suggested gently. Would you? If it was your wife who disappeared. Marcus was quiet for a moment. No, sir, I wouldn't. What's harder, starting over after heartbreak or living with the regret of letting someone go? Tell me in the comments. 800 miles south, in a cramped kitchen behind a small cafe in Miami's Wynwood district, Aaliyah Brooks wiped sweat from her forehead and checked the dinner orders again. 15 covers tonight. Not bad for Tuesday. Chef, table 4 wants to know if you can make the salmon without the lemon butter sauce. Called Diego, her sous chef and the only employee she could afford. Tell them I could do a herb crust instead, she called back, not looking up from the pan where she was searing scallops. Brooks Catering had become Brooks Cafe 6 weeks ago when she'd finally saved enough money to rent this tiny space in Miami's Arts District. It wasn't much. 8 tables, a kitchen the size of Nathan's closet, and a bathroom that required jiggling to handle. But it was hers. Every night, she cooked for strangers who appreciated her food without knowing her story. Every morning, she planned menus and paid bills and pretended her heart hadn't been ripped out and stomped on by a man who thought love meant letting go. Chef, Diego appeared at her elbow. There's someone here to see you. Says he's from a food magazine. Aaliyah's stomach clenched. She'd been careful to stay under the radar, but good food had a way of getting noticed. What kind of magazine? Miami Eats. Wants to do a story about up-and-coming chefs in the district. Relief flooded through her. Local press was fine. Local press meant customers, meant growth, meant she might actually make rent next month. Tell him I'll be out in 10 minutes. Later that night, after the last customer had left and Diego had gone home to his family, Aaliyah sat alone in her empty cafe, going over the day's receipts. The numbers were getting better, slowly but steadily. She'd built this new life one day at a time, one dish at a time, one customer at a time. No shortcuts, no handouts, no wealthy benefactor swooping in to save her. She'd save herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. Mama wants to know when you're coming to visit. Aaliyah stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Soon, maybe next month. But she wouldn't go back to Atlanta yet. couldn't risk running into anyone who might mention her location to the wrong person. She'd worked too hard to build this anonymity to risk it now. The truth was, she missed her family desperately, missed her mother's laugh, her siblings' chaos, the warmth of being surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally. But she also knew that Nathan Cross had resources she couldn't imagine. If he really wanted to find her, he probably could. The fact that he hadn't tried or hadn't succeeded told her everything she needed to know about how much their relationship had really meant to him. Back in Chicago, Nathan stood on his penthouse balcony, looking out at the city that had once felt like his kingdom. Now it felt like a beautiful prison, all glass and steel and empty success. His phone rang. Another dead end from the investigation team. "Sir, we've checked every culinary school, every restaurant database, every food service license in the continental United States. Either she's not working in food service anymore, or what? Or she changed her name." The possibility hit Nathan like a physical blow. If Aaliyah had legally changed her name, the search would become infinitely more complicated. She could be anywhere, anyone, living any kind of life. Without a minute, "Keep looking," he said. "Sir, maybe keep looking." After he hung up, Nathan sank into one of his expensive leather chairs and closed his eyes. 6 months of sleepless nights, of starter conversations with food service headhunters, of checking every food magazine and cooking show for a glimpse of her face. 6 months of living with the knowledge that he'd had everything he'd never dared to want, and he'd thrown it away for a company that felt meaningless without her laughter filling his kitchen. The irony wasn't lost on him. He thought he was protecting her from his world, but he'd actually protected his world from her. From the warmth she brought, the life she breathed into cold spaces, the way she made him believe he could be worth loving. Now his world was exactly what it had been before she'd entered it. Successful, sterile, and completely empty. Meanwhile, in Miami, Aaliyah Brooks was learning to sleep without nightmares, to cook without crying, to build a future that didn't include the green-eyed man who taught her that some fairy tales were too good to be true. Neither knew that fate was about to bring them full circle in the most unexpected way possible. The invitation to cater the Miami Children's Hospital Charity Gala should have been just another job. She had no idea her past was about to walk through those ballroom doors. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes it has a sense of justice. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it gives you a second chance to get it right. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. It reunites soulmates in the exact place where denial becomes impossible. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like your past just punched you in the chest? That's exactly what happened to Aaliyah Brooks when she stepped in the Miami Children's Hospital Charity Gala that October evening. She was adjusting the final flower arrangement on table 12 when the ballroom doors opened. Nathan Cross walked in wearing that same charcoal gray suit that used to make her heart skip. 2 years hadn't changed him much. Still tall, still commanding every room he entered, still making her forget how to breathe properly. Her hands trembled as she pretended to check the catering setup. This was supposed to be just another job. Her Miami catering company, Southern Comfort, had landed the contract fair and square. She'd built something real here, something that belonged to her. Nathan's eyes swept the room like a predator hunting. When it landed on her, time stopped. She watched his face change from confident businessman to shocked recognition. The wine glass in his hand nearly slipped. 2 years of separation crashed between them like a tidal wave. All those nights, she'd wondered what she'd say if she saw him again. Now her tongue felt thick and useless. "Mama, can I have another cookie?" A small voice tugged at her black dress. She looked down at 4-year-old Marcus, her beautiful boy with those impossible green eyes that haunted her dreams. The same green eyes that belonged to the man, now walking toward her table like he'd seen a ghost. Nathan stopped 3 feet away, his gaze moving between her face and the child clinging to her leg. Marcus had inherited more than just eye color. He had Nathan's strong jaw, his stubborn chin, even that little wrinkle between his eyebrows when he concentrated. "Aaliyah." Nathan's voice cracked like he hadn't used it in months. "Mr. Cross." She lifted her chin, praying her voice wouldn't betray how fast her heart was beating. Marcus peeked around her dress, studying this tall stranger with curious eyes. "Mama, who's this serious man?" Nathan's face went white. His lips parted, but no sound came out. What happens when the impossible stares you right in the face? When every lie you've told yourself crumbles with one look? Share in the comments. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything in an instant? As Nathan knelt down to Marcus's level, his hands shaking, one question burned in his eyes. How was this possible? The child who looked exactly like him belonged to the woman he'd pushed away to protect. Some secrets refuse to stay buried, especially when they have green eyes and call someone else mama. The child who looked like him belonged to her, but the timeline made miracles the only explanation. "We need to talk." Nathan's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes never leaving Marcus, who was now playing with toy cars under the catering table. Aaliyah's stomach twisted into knots. She'd known this day might come, but knowing and preparing were two different things. Not here, not now, then when. His intensity made other guests glance their way. "That child, keep your voice down." She grabbed his arm, immediately regretting the contact when electricity shot through her fingers. Even after all this time, touching him felt like coming home and playing with fire at the same time. An hour later, they sat in her hotel suite while Marcus napped on the couch. The silence stretched between them like a minefield. One wrong word and everything would explode. "Ow!" Nathan finally asked, his voice raw. Aaliyah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Remember that fertility clinic you visited before we met? They kept samples." His face went through a dozen emotions: confusion, realization, anger, wonder. "You used without telling me. You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with me." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You sent me away for my own good. Remember? Said you couldn't give me the life I dreamed of." Nathan ran both hands through his hair, a gesture she remembered from his most stressed moments. "I thought I was protecting you from the media circus, from being linked to my mess. So I protected myself. And I gave Marcus the father he deserved, even if that father didn't know he existed." She watched Nathan's walls crumble as he looked at his sleeping son. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms and built empires was completely undone by 30 pounds of stubborn 4-year-old. "He has my eyes," Nathan whispered, "and your attitude when he doesn't get his way." A ghost of a smile crossed Nathan's face. Would it be okay if He's your son, Nathan. I never planned to keep that from him forever." Nathan moved to the couch with the careful steps of a man approaching something precious and fragile. He touched Marcus's small hand with one finger, his face full of wonder and regret. "What would you do if you discovered you had a child you never knew existed? Would you be angry about the secret or grateful for the gift? Drop your thoughts below." Marcus stirred, opening sleepy eyes that were mirror images of his father's. "Mama? Who's the man?" Nathan's breath caught. He looked at Aaliyah with a question in his eyes. She nodded slowly. "I'm Nathan," he said softly. I'm your daddy, Marcus." As the little boy studied the stranger claiming to be his father, Nathan felt his heart break and rebuild itself at the same time. 2 years of mourning the wrong loss. His heart had been in Miami all along, growing in the form of a child who carried his DNA and his stubborn streak. Some bridges burn completely. Others just need someone brave enough to take the first step across the ashes. 3 weeks had passed since the gala, and Nathan had spent every possible moment in Miami. His Chicago penthouse felt like a museum of his old life. Cold, empty, meaningless without the sound of small feet running across hardwood floors. "Push me higher, Daddy." Marcus squealed from the swing set at their neighborhood park. "Daddy." The words still hit Nathan like a freight train every time. For years of bedtime stories he'd missed, first words he'd never heard, birthday parties he hadn't attended. The guilt was crushing, but Marcus's easy acceptance felt like grace he didn't deserve. Aaliyah sat on a nearby bench, watching them with guarded eyes. She'd let Nathan into Marcus's life, but her heart remained locked behind walls he'd helped build when he walked away. "He's amazing," Nathan said as he joined her, Marcus now absorbed in a sandbox adventure with other kids. He asks about you every morning, she admitted. When you'll visit again, if you're staying for dinner, whether you like his drawings. Nathan's throat tightened. I want to be here for all of it. Every morning, every dinner, every terrible drawing of dinosaurs eating ice cream. Want and more different things. Her voice carried old hurt like a scar that still ached in bad weather. I know I destroyed your trust when I sent you away. He turned to face her fully. I thought I was being noble, protecting you from a scandal that was tearing apart my company. Instead, I was a coward who took the easy path and called it sacrifice. Aaliyah's defenses flickered. You broke my heart, Nathan. Made me feel like I was just some convenient distraction you could discard when real life got complicated. You were never convenient. His voice was fierce now. You were terrifying. You made me hope for things I'd convinced myself were impossible. When the media started circling, all I could think about was saving you from the mess I'd created. That wasn't your choice to make. I know that now. He reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. I spent 2 years trying to forget you and falling deeper in love with your memory instead. A mother at the nearby playground called for her children, breaking the spell of the moment. Marcus ran over, grass stains on his knees and pure joy on his face. Daddy, will you teach me to cook like Mama? Nathan's eyes met Aaliyah's over their son's head. Would that be okay with your mama? The question held weight beyond cooking lessons. It was asking for permission to stay, to be part of their daily life, to prove he'd learned the difference between protecting someone and abandoning them. Aaliyah studied his face for a long moment. You'll have to be patient. He's got your stubborn streak. I'm counting on it. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone and trusting them to handle the storm with you? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stay and fight together. Tell me in the comments about a time you chose to stay instead of run. That night, after Marcus fell asleep between them during movie time, Nathan whispered the question that had been burning in his chest for weeks. What do I have to do to earn a second chance? Not just with Marcus, but with you? Aaliyah was quiet so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she said, prove you'll stay when things get hard again. Show me that walking away isn't your default solution to problems. As Nathan held his sleeping son and watched the woman he'd never stopped loving, he made a silent promise. This time, when storms came, he'd anchor himself to what mattered most instead of drifting away to protect his pride. He thought proposing to her would be the hard part, until she asked him to prove he'd stay when things got difficult again. The Miami Beach house Nathan bought was nothing like his Chicago penthouse. It had a yard where Marcus could play, a kitchen big enough for family dinners, and windows that let in actual sunlight instead of reflecting city steel. You're really moving here? Aaliyah asked, watching him direct the movers from the front porch. My assistant already found office space downtown. Crosstech Miami will be operational by next month. She bit her lower lip, a habit he'd missed more than he cared to admit. You don't have to relocate your entire life for us. I'm not doing it for you. Nathan set down the box he'd been carrying and walked over to where she stood. I'm doing it for me, for the chance to tuck my son into bed every night and wake up in the same city as the woman I love. Love. The word hung between them like a bridge neither had been brave enough to cross since his return. Marcus burst through the front door, a whirlwind of 4-year-old energy. Daddy, come see my new room. It has a window where I can wave to you. The master bedroom was across the hall from Marcus's room. Close enough for midnight cuddles, but separate enough to respect the boundaries Aaliyah had carefully maintained. They were rebuilding, not rushing. That evening, after Marcus was asleep, Nathan found Aaliyah on the back deck overlooking the ocean. The ring box in his pocket felt heavier than his entire company's worth. Beautiful night, he said, settling beside her on the porch swing. Marcus loves having you here. He's been happier these past few months than I've seen him since I broke both your hearts by trying to be a hero. She leaned against his shoulder, the first truly relaxed gesture she'd made since they'd reconnected. You were trying to protect us. I understand that now, but understanding and trusting are different things. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs as he pulled out the ring box. Then let me earn your trust back, one day at a time, for the rest of our lives. Aaliyah's breath caught when she saw the emerald surrounded by diamonds, the exact ring they'd admired in a Chicago shop window during one of their secret dates years ago. You remembered. I remember everything about us. Every laugh, every touch, every moment I was stupid enough to walk away from. She took the ring with trembling fingers, but didn't put it on. I need conditions this time. Anything. When problems come, and they will, we face them together. No more noble sacrifices. No more protecting me by pushing me away. We're partners, or we're nothing. Partners in everything. Nathan agreed, sliding the ring on her finger where it caught the moonlight like captured starlight. When the media finds out about Marcus, when business gets stressful, when life gets complicated, we handle it together. He cupped her face in his hands. I'm done being noble. Now I just want to be yours. Their kiss tasted like second chances and ocean air, passionate but tempered with hard-won wisdom. They'd both learned that love wasn't just about the falling. It was about the choice to keep choosing each other when the ground got shaky. What conditions would you set for giving love a second chance? What would you need to feel safe enough to trust again? Share your thoughts below. Later, as they moved together in the moonlit bedroom, Nathan worshipped every inch of skin he'd been fool enough to walk away from. Aaliyah gave herself completely, but with the confidence of a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't accept less than everything in return. I love you, she whispered against his neck as they lay tangled in sheets and moonlight. I love you too, all of you, our whole beautiful, complicated, perfect family. As Aaliyah drifted off to sleep in his arms, she smiled with secret knowledge. The morning sickness she'd been hiding wasn't from wedding stress. They were about to become a family of 4. 2 years later, she stood in their Miami kitchen, pregnant with their second child, watching him teach their son to cook. The perfect recipe for forever. No, Marcus, you have to be gentle with the eggs, Nathan demonstrated, his large hands guiding small ones. See how Mama does it? 6-year-old Marcus nodded seriously, determined to master Sunday morning pancakes. His concentration face was pure Nathan. Furrowed brow, pursed lips, complete focus on the task at hand. Aaliyah rubbed her rounded belly, watching her 2 favorite men create chaos in her perfectly organized kitchen. Flour dusted every surface, eggshells dotted the counter, and somehow Marcus had managed to get pancake batter in his hair. Mama, look, I made a pancake shaped like a dinosaur. Marcus held up what looked more like abstract art than breakfast. It's beautiful, baby. She caught Nathan's eye over their son's head, both of them trying not to laugh. Nathan had kept every promise he'd made on that beach 2 years ago. When a competitor tried to buy out Crosstech Miami, they'd strategize together over late-night dinners. When Marcus had his first day of school meltdown, Nathan had been there with tissues and reassurance. When pregnancy hormones made Aaliyah cry over dog food commercials, he'd held her without trying to fix anything. Daddy, when the new baby comes, will you teach them to cook too? Absolutely. But first, they have to learn to walk and talk and use the potty. Marcus wrinkled his nose. Babies are weird. You were weird once too, Aaliyah teased, stealing a bite of his dinosaur pancake. Nathan moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, hands resting on their growing child. Good weird or bad weird? The best kind of weird. Their kitchen had become the heart of their home, not just for cooking, but for homework sessions, business calls while stirring sauce, dance parties while waiting for cookies to bake. It was where they'd told Marcus about the baby, where Nathan had announced his company's expansion into sustainable technology, where they'd planned their small beach wedding. Mrs. Cross, Nathan murmured against her ear, you've got flour in your hair. Mr. Cross, you've got pancake batter on your shirt. Worth it. Marcus tugged on Nathan's pants. Daddy, are you and Mama being gross again? The grossest, Nathan confirmed, spinning Aaliyah around to kiss her flour-dusted lips while their son giggled in mock disgust. This was what she dreamed of during those lonely months in Chicago. Not the fancy penthouse or expensive restaurants, but this warm chaos of family life. Marcus's artwork covering the refrigerator, Nathan's reading glasses left on the kitchen counter, her recipe cards splattered with evidence of meals shared with love. So what's the secret ingredient that makes love last? Nathan asked, echoing the question from one of her YouTube cooking videos. Trust, she said, watching Marcus flip a pancake with serious determination. Patience, Nathan added, steadying their son's wobbling spatula. And the courage to try again when you mess up the first batch, Marcus announced proudly, having learned from many cooking disasters. Aaliyah laughed, a sound that filled their kitchen with more warmth than any stove. Smart boy. The secret ingredient wasn't really secret at all. It was choosing each other every single day, through burned pancakes and business crises, morning sickness and midnight feedings, stubborn 6-year-olds and stubborn husbands. What ingredient do you think makes love last? Passion, patience, or the courage to try again? Tell me in the comments what makes relationships survive the storms we all face. As Nathan kissed her temple, while Marcus announced his pancake was definitely a T-Rex this time, Aaliyah knew she'd found a recipe for forever. Some love stories begin with perfect first meetings, but the best ones start with second chances and end with Sunday morning pancakes that taste like home. If this story of second chances and secret miracles touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove love finds a way. Comment below, what would you risk for a second chance at forever? Remember, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with goodbye, but they always end with coming home.